The chamber fell silent as Ambassador Chun-Wei stood before the Galactic Council. 200 alien species watched from their floating platforms, their various forms casting strange shadows in the artificial light. Some breathed methane, others required extreme cold, but all shared one thing. They wanted humanity gone. The species known as humans, announced High Counselor Vex Tai, his crystalline form pulsing with angry red light, has violated the sacred laws of expansion for the final time. Chen kept his face calm, though his heart raced. Behind him, the other human delegates shifted nervously. They had expected this day might come, but hoping and knowing were different things. What specific violation do you claim? Chen asked, his voice steady. The Zephyrian delegate, a being that looked like living smoke, whispered in a voice like wind through caves. Your species refuses to accept population limits. You spread like a virus across worlds. You terraform planets meant to remain wild, added the crystalline hive mind representative, its thousand-faceted eyes glinting. You take what is not yours. Chen wanted to laugh, but that would make things worse. These aliens spoke of taking what wasn't theirs while sitting on thrones built from the bones of extinct species they had wiped out millennia ago. The Galactic Council had rules about expansion, about population, about terraforming, but only for species like humanity. We have followed every treaty signed, Chen replied. Every world we have settled was approved by this council. That approval is hereby revoked, High Counselor Vex Tai announced. All human colonies beyond your birth system of Sol are to be evacuated within one standard cycle. Failure to comply will result in military action. The human delegates exchanged glances. One standard cycle meant roughly 18 Earth months. Moving billions of people was impossible in that time, and the council knew it. You're condemning innocent people to death, Chen said, finally, letting anger creep into his voice. Families who have lived on those worlds for generations should have thought of that before your species proved itself unable to control its growth. The Aquatic Republic representative gurgled from its water tank. The galaxy has finite resources. Resources you've divided among yourselves, Chen shot back, while forcing newer species to survive on scraps. Enough. Vex Tai's crystal form blazed white-hot. The decision is final. Humanity is banned from all galactic commerce, all interstellar travel beyond your home system, and all contact with member species. You have 18 months. The platform beneath the human delegation began to descend. As they sank below the council floor, Chun heard the aliens already discussing how to divide up former human worlds among themselves. Back on the transport ship heading to Earth, the other delegates argued and shouted. Some wanted to fight, others to beg, still others to simply comply and hope for mercy later. Chen sat in silence, watching stars stream past the viewports. What do we tell them back home? Asked Maria Santos, the delegate from New Brazil. Her voice cracked with emotion. We tell them the truth, Chen said quietly. That we knew this day would come. That we've been preparing. The others stared at him. Preparing how? Chen smiled for the first time since the hearing. Did you really think Earth's government would trust these aliens forever? We've been building something they don't know about. Something they can't stop. 3 months later, evacuation ships filled Earth's skies. But these weren't just any ships. They were massive colony vessels, each one capable of carrying 1 million people in cryosleep. More importantly, they carried something the aliens had never seen before. Captain Sarah Mitchell stood on the bridge of the UES Pioneer, watching the last of the civilian ships clear Earth's atmosphere. Her ship was different from the others. Where they carried families and farmers, she carried soldiers, scientists, and engineers. All civilian ships are clear, Captain, reported her first officer. We're the last to leave. Sarah nodded, looking one final time at the blue marble that had been humanity's home for millennia. Take us out, Commander. Set course for the edge of the system. As Pioneer accelerated away from Earth, Sarah thought about the secret projects that had been running in the outer system for decades. The aliens thought humans were just another upstart species that had gotten lucky with faster-than-light travel. They had no idea what humanity was really capable of. The journey to the edge of the solar system took 3 weeks. When they arrived, Sarah felt her breath catch. There, hidden in the shadow of Pluto, was humanity's greatest achievement, a fleet of ships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. These weren't the sleek, elegant vessels preferred by the older alien species. Human ships were built for function over beauty, bristling with weapons, sensors, and manufacturing equipment. The largest ship, the U.S. Defiance, stretched for 20 kilometers and hummed with barely contained power. "My God," whispered her navigator. "How many ships are there?" 2,000 combat vessels, Sarah answered. "Plus support ships, mobile shipyards, and colony platforms. Everything we need to survive without the Council's help." Admiral Jackson's voice crackled over the comm system. "Welcome to the real fleet, Pioneer. Hope you're ready to make some new friends." Sarah smiled grimly. "What's our first target, Admiral?" "The Kepler sector. The Council thinks it's empty space, too far from their trade routes to be worth claiming. But our long-range probes have found something interesting there. 12 habitable worlds, and enough resources to build 100 more fleets like this one." The evacuation fleet regrouped around the hidden vessels. Families who had been forced from their homes now saw ships that promised not just survival, but something more. Something the aliens would never expect. "Attention, all vessels," Admiral Jackson announced over the fleet-wide comm. 300 years ago, our ancestors were told they couldn't have a continent to themselves. 200 years ago, they were told they couldn't have a planet to themselves. Today, we've been told we can't have a solar system to ourselves. His voice grew stronger. But space is infinite, and so is human determination. Today we begin building something new. Not just colonies, an empire. An empire that will show these aliens what humanity is truly capable of. The cheer that went up from 200 ships could probably be heard all the way back to Earth. As the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Dr. Elizabeth Kane worked frantically in her laboratory aboard the Defiance. The aliens thought they knew human technology, but they had only seen what humanity wanted them to see. "Status report, Doctor," Admiral Jackson said as he entered her lab. Kane looked up from her work, excitement dancing in her eyes. "The quantum tunneling drive is ready for field testing. If the calculations are correct, we can cross the galaxy in weeks instead of months. And if they're wrong?" Kane shrugged. "We end up scattered across several dimensions. But the math is solid." Jackson nodded. Humanity had always been willing to take risks other species wouldn't dare. It was what had gotten them banned from the Council, but it was also what would save them. "What about the other projects?" "Self-replicating manufacturing systems are online. Give us raw materials, and we can build anything: ships, weapons, entire cities. The genetic modification programs are ready to adapt our people to any environment." "And the AI systems?" Kane paused. "The AI systems are beyond anything the galaxy has seen. They think on levels the Council can't imagine." "Good. Because we're not just running away. We're going to show them what happens when you corner humanity." The first jump to hyperspace was unlike anything the evacuees had experienced. Instead of the smooth transition of Council-approved drives, human technology tore holes in space itself. The journey that should have taken months was completed in days. When they emerged in the Kepler sector, they found exactly what the probes had promised. 12 worlds orbited 3 stars, each one perfect for human life. Rich asteroid belts provided raw materials, and the local space was completely empty of alien presence. "Begin colonization protocols," Jackson ordered. "I want mining operations running within a week, and the first city foundations laid within a month." But this wasn't like the careful, slow expansion the Council allowed other species. Human engineers had been designing rapid colonization systems for decades. Massive manufacturing ships descended on the asteroid belts, consuming rock and metal and spitting out prefabricated city sections, orbital platforms, and defensive systems. Within 6 months, what had been empty space buzzed with activity. Cities rose on 4 different worlds, connected by space elevators and orbital rings. Shipyards churned out new vessels at a rate that would have terrified the Council. And at the heart of it all, scientists worked on projects that pushed the boundaries of known physics. "The aliens think they've banished us to die in the outer darkness," Admiral Jackson said during a fleet-wide broadcast. "They don't understand that darkness is where humans do their best work. While they rest comfortably in their established territories, we're out here becoming something they never expected." On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Torres watched the construction displays with satisfaction. How many ships do we have now? 8,000 combat vessels, twice that in support craft, his first officer replied. Production is accelerating too. The automated shipyards are learning, getting more efficient every day. And the other sectors? Expansion fleets have claimed territories in 17 different regions. The Council doesn't even know we exist out there. Torres nodded. The evacuation had been a blessing in disguise. Instead of being trapped in the Council's rigid system, humanity was free to build something entirely new. Something the galaxy wasn't prepared for. In the Council chambers back in the Galactic core, High Counselor Vextai reviewed the latest reports with satisfaction. The humans accepted their banishment without resistance. Their home system shows minimal activity, probably just maintaining basic civilization. As expected, gurgled the Aquatic Republic representative. Young species always break when faced with true authority. None of them noticed the small probe hiding in the chamber's shadows, recording every word. Human intelligence networks had been growing throughout Council space for years, and the aliens' arrogance made them easy targets. The information flowed back to human space through quantum-encrypted channels. Every Council fleet movement, every political discussion, every technological development, humanity was watching and learning. They think we're beaten, Admiral Jackson said as he reviewed the intelligence reports. That works to our advantage. Let them divide up our old colonies among themselves. While they're fighting over scraps, we're building the future. Dr. Kane entered his office carrying a tablet filled with test results. The first generation of spaceborne children is adapting better than we hoped. Enhanced bone density, improved radiation resistance, faster neural development. They're becoming something new. Post-human. I prefer optimized. We're not abandoning humanity. We're fulfilling its potential. Jackson studied the data with interest. The children born in the new colonies weren't just surviving in space. They were thriving in ways that would have been impossible under Council oversight. Free from alien restrictions on genetic modification, human scientists were creating people perfectly adapted to life among the stars. How long before the Council realizes what we're building out here? Hard to say. Our expansion is carefully planned to avoid their patrol routes. But eventually, Kane shrugged. Eventually they'll notice entire solar systems going dark as we claim them. Then, we better be ready for that conversation. The conversation came sooner than expected. A Council scout ship, investigating reports of stellar anomalies in the Perseus Arm, stumbled across a human mining operation. The aliens aboard the ship barely had time to transmit a warning before human interceptors surrounded them. Unknown vessels, came the transmission. You are operating in restricted space. Withdraw immediately. The Council ship's captain, a proud Zephyrian warrior, responded with typical alien arrogance. We are the Galactic Council. No space is restricted to us. You will surrender your vessels immediately. What happened next became legend among human forces. Instead of surrendering, the human interceptors simply vanished from sensors. The aliens had time to look confused before their ship's systems began shutting down one by one. Human cyber warfare capabilities had advanced far beyond anything the Council had seen. Your ship is now under our control, came a new transmission. You have two choices. You can accept diplomatic passage back to Council space with a message, or you can discover what happens to those who threaten human civilians. The Zephyrian captain chose diplomacy. 3 days later, High Counselor Vextai stood before an emergency session of the Galactic Council, his crystal form pulsing with agitation. The human plague has returned. They have claimed dozens of systems beyond our borders and are building something. Impossible, declared the hive mind representative. We drove them from galactic civilization. They lack the resources for expansion. Show them, Vextai ordered. The chamber filled with holographic displays showing human installations across the galaxy. Massive shipyards, thriving colonies, and fleets of vessels that dwarfed anything in the Council's navy. This cannot be allowed, the crystalline delegate announced. Humanity must be eliminated before they spread further. But, for the first time in galactic history, some Council members disagreed. The younger species, those who had joined the Council more recently, looked at the images with something approaching admiration. Perhaps, suggested the Sylvan Collective's representative, we should consider negotiation instead of destruction. The chamber erupted in angry responses from the older species. They had spent millennia maintaining control over galactic expansion, and the idea of humanity succeeding outside their system was intolerable. There will be no negotiation, Vextai declared. Humanity will submit to Council authority or be destroyed. Prepare the combined fleet. As the Council argued and planned, their words were recorded and transmitted to human space. Admiral Jackson read the transcripts with grim satisfaction. They're finally taking us seriously, he told his staff. That means they see us as a real threat. Are we ready for a war? Asked Admiral Chun, Jackson's second-in-command. We're ready for something better than war, Jackson replied. We're ready to change everything. The combined fleet of the Galactic Council was a sight that had ended countless civilizations. 5,000 warships representing every major species in the galaxy, armed with weapons that could crack planets and shields that had never been breached. As they assembled in Council space, their commanders felt confident that humanity's rebellion would end quickly. Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Navy stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Windreaper, and studied tactical displays showing human positions. The reports troubled him more than he cared to admit. Intelligence estimates their fleet at 20,000 vessels, his tactical officer reported. But the ships appear to be inferior designs, crude human engineering. Kethvar nodded, but something felt wrong. In his 3 centuries of military service, he had learned to trust his instincts. The humans had survived banishment and built this force in secret. That took intelligence, planning, and resources that didn't match the primitive species the Council believed them to be. What do we know about their defensive capabilities? Unknown, Admiral. Their colonies are protected by energy shields and orbital platforms, but our sensors cannot penetrate their stealth technology for detailed analysis. That was another troubling detail. The humans had developed stealth systems that worked against Council sensors. How was that possible for a species that had only achieved spaceflight 3 centuries ago? Time to target? 17 hours at current speed. Kethvar settled back in his command chair. By tomorrow, this would all be over. The humans would surrender or die, and the galaxy would return to proper order. He couldn't have been more wrong. 20 light-years away, Admiral Jackson stood in the war room of Defiance Station, humanity's hidden command center built inside a hollowed-out asteroid. Around him, dozens of officers monitored displays showing every ship in the approaching Council fleet. Their formation is exactly what we predicted, reported Admiral Chen. Standard Council doctrine. Heavy battleships in the center, fast attack craft on the flanks, support vessels protected in the rear. Perfect, Jackson smiled. They're fighting the last war, not this one. Human military doctrine had evolved far beyond anything the Council understood. Instead of massive fleets clashing in space, humanity had developed tactics based on mobility, stealth, and technological superiority. They didn't need to match the Council ship for ship, they just needed to be smarter. Status of the drone networks? 40 million autonomous units deployed across the target zone, answered Admiral Torres. They're completely undetectable to Council sensors. The drones were humanity's secret weapon, each one no larger than a basketball. They carried enough firepower to cripple a Council warship. More importantly, they were controlled by advanced AI systems that could think and adapt faster than any biological mind. What about the new weapons? Dr. Kane's voice came over the comm from the research deck. Quantum disruptors are ready for field testing. If the calculations are correct, we can disable their shields and weapons without destroying the ships themselves. And if the calculations are wrong, we accidentally tear holes in space-time. But, honestly, that might work too. Jackson shook his head. Human scientists had always been willing to experiment with forces that terrified other species. It was probably what had gotten them banned in the first place. Begin Phase 1, he ordered. Let's see how good their sensors really are. The first sign that something was wrong came when the Council fleet's long-range sensors began failing one by one. Ships that had been tracking human positions suddenly found themselves blind, their instruments showing nothing but empty space. Sensor malfunction across the fleet, reported Kethvar's communications officer. All ships are experiencing similar problems. Impossible. These are the most advanced sensors in the galaxy. Yes, sir, but something is interfering with quantum detection arrays. The humans appear to have developed some form of sensory jamming. Kethvar felt his confidence beginning to crack. Council technology had been perfected over millions of years. How could a young species counter it so easily? Switch to backup systems. Already tried, sir. Whatever they're doing, it affects all forms of detection. Then, we proceed blind. All ships, maintain formation, and continue to target coordinates. What Kethvar didn't know was that his fleet was being watched by millions of tiny eyes. Human surveillance drones, each one invisible to Council sensors, tracked every ship movement and transmitted the data back to human commanders in real time. They're still coming, Admiral Chen observed. Even blind, they're maintaining course. As expected, Jackson replied. Council doctrine emphasizes overwhelming force over tactical flexibility. They'll charge straight into whatever trap we set. Are we really going to destroy all of them? Jackson considered the question carefully. That's up to them. We've prepared a demonstration that should convince reasonable beings to negotiate. If they insist on fighting to the death, he shrugged. That's their choice. The Council fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler sector, expecting to find scattered human colonies and a ragtag defense fleet. Instead, they found apparently empty space. Sensors are clearing, Kethvar's tactical officer announced. I'm reading nothing. No human ships, no orbital platforms, no defensive installations. They're running scared, declared Admiral Mordeth of the Crystalline Hive Mind, as expected from inferior beings. But Kethvar wasn't convinced. Maintain defensive formations. This could be a trap. Trap. Mordeth's voice carried the arrogance of his species. With what ships? Intelligence reports indicated 20,000 vessels at most. Even if they're all here, we outnumber them 4-1. Numbers aren't everything, Kethvar muttered, but kept his doubts to himself. The fleet moved deeper into the system, sensors straining to find any sign of human presence. They were almost to the inner planets when space itself seemed to come alive around them. The first phase of humanity's surprise was the drones. 40 million invisible attackers suddenly materialized around the Council fleet, each one targeting specific systems on enemy ships. Not engines or weapons, that would come later. First, they hit communications, sensors, and navigation systems. In minutes, the mighty combined fleet became a collection of blind, deaf vessels stumbling through space without coordination. What's happening? Kethvar demanded as his bridge displays went dark one by one. Unknown weapons fire from all directions, his tactical officer reported, working frantically at manual controls. Small, fast-moving objects, thousands of them per ship. Defensive fire. Sir, we can't see the targets. They're too small and moving too fast. That was when Phase 2 began. Human warships materialized out of nowhere, their stealth systems dropping simultaneously across the battlefield. But these weren't the crude vessels Council intelligence had predicted. These were sleek, deadly machines built with technology decades ahead of anything the galaxy had seen. The UES Retribution, Admiral Chen's flagship, was typical of the new generation. 5 kilometers long but massing less than a traditional Council destroyer, her hull was covered with adaptive armor that shifted and flowed like living metal. Her weapons were energy beams so focused they could cut through molecular bonds, and her shields operated on principles of physics the Council had never mastered. All ships, execute Maneuver 7, Admiral Chen ordered. Let's show them what human engineering can do. The human fleet moved like a school of fish, each ship perfectly coordinated with the others through quantum-linked AI systems. They flowed around the Council formation, striking at weak points and vanishing before return fire could lock on. Aboard the Windreaper, Kethvar watched his mighty fleet being taken apart piece by piece. Ships that had ruled the galaxy for millennia were being outmaneuvered by vessels a third their size. Damage reports coming in from across the fleet, his communications officer announced. No ships destroyed, but weapons and shields are being systematically disabled. They're not trying to kill us, Kethvar realized. This is a demonstration. He was right. Human forces were being very careful to disable rather than destroy. Dead aliens would make negotiation difficult, but helpless aliens might be willing to listen. Incoming transmission from human forces, the communications officer reported. Put it through. The main display flickered to life, showing a human male in a simple military uniform. Behind him, Kethvar could see the bridge of an advanced warship that made his own flagship look primitive. "I am Admiral Jackson of the Human Federation," the figure said calmly. "You have entered our space with aggressive intent. We have demonstrated our ability to destroy your fleet. Do you wish to discuss terms for your withdrawal?" The transmission was being broadcast to every ship in the Council fleet. Across 5,000 bridges, alien commanders struggled with the reality of their situation. Admiral Mordeth's voice crackled over the fleet communication system. "Impossible. Council forces do not surrender to inferior species." "With respect, Admiral," Jackson replied, apparently able to hear every transmission, "you may want to reconsider that position." That was when Phase 3 began. High above the fleet, something that had been mistaken for a small moon began to unfold. The object was actually a massive human space station, its hull covered with weapons that made the entire Council fleet look like toys. "Titan Station is now online," Admiral Jackson announced. "Its main cannon has the firepower to destroy your entire fleet with a single shot. We've targeted a nearby uninhabited planet to demonstrate." The beam that lanced out from Titan Station was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It wasn't just an energy weapon. It was a focused stream of quantum disruption that unmade matter at the subatomic level. The planet it struck didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist, leaving behind only empty space. The silence on the fleet communication channels was deafening. "As you can see," Jackson continued, "we prefer negotiation to destruction. But if you insist on fighting, we will defend ourselves with everything we have." Kethvar stared at the empty space where a planet had been moments before. In 3 centuries of military service, he had never imagined such power was possible. "Admiral Jackson," he transmitted, "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Navy. I request permission to withdraw my forces and open diplomatic communications." "Permission granted, Admiral. We look forward to meaningful discussion." But not all Council commanders were ready to accept defeat. Admiral Mordeth's voice filled the communication channels with fury. "Cowards, all of you. The crystalline hive mind does not bow to mammals." His ship, the Infinite Facet, broke formation and accelerated toward the nearest human vessel. Its crystal hull blazed with energy as every weapon system charged to maximum power. The human response was swift and surgical. 3 ships converged on the Infinite Facet, their beam weapons carving through its crystalline armor like hot knives through ice. Within seconds, the mighty Hivemind battleship was a drifting hulk. "Rescue operations are already underway for Admiral Mordeth's crew," Jackson announced. "We don't kill unnecessarily, but we won't allow attacks on our people." The message was clear. Humanity had the power to destroy the entire Council fleet, but chose mercy over vengeance. It was a lesson in restraint that shook many alien commanders to their core. "Council fleet, you have 1 hour to withdraw beyond the edge of this system," Admiral Jackson continued. "After that, we will consider your presence an act of war." As the battered Council fleet limped away from human space, Kethvar found himself thinking about everything he thought he knew about humanity. They weren't the crude, violent species the Council had branded them. They were something far more dangerous. They were competent. "Communications from the fleet," his officer reported. "Several ship commanders are requesting permission to defect." Kethvar wasn't surprised. The younger species in the Council had always resented the domination of the older races. Seeing humanity succeed outside the Council system was giving them ideas. "Acknowledge their requests and forward them to Admiral Jackson. This isn't our decision to make anymore." In human space, Admiral Jackson reviewed the first diplomatic overtures from alien species. The Sylvan Collective, the Nomadic Tribes, the Binary Stars Republic, all expressing interest in trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. "It's starting," Admiral Chen observed. "The Council's unity is cracking." "As we hoped," Jackson replied. "The younger species never wanted to be subservient to the old powers. We've just shown them there's an alternative." Dr. Kane entered the command center carrying reports from across the human territories. "Initial contact protocols are working better than expected. 6 species have already requested embassy status, and 3 are asking for military cooperation agreements." "What about the core Council members?" "The Zephyrians are open to negotiation." The Aquatic Republic is maintaining a wait-and-see attitude. But the crystalline hive mind and the High Counselor's faction are calling for total war. Jackson nodded grimly. Then, we need to be ready for the next phase. They'll be back with everything they have. Are we ready for a full-scale galactic war? Jackson looked out at the stars beyond the station's viewports. Somewhere out there, human colonies were building the tools and weapons that would reshape the galaxy. Children were growing up who had never known council rule, learning sciences the old powers couldn't imagine. We're ready for something better than war, he said. We're ready to offer the galaxy a choice. The choice was already spreading. On worlds across the galaxy, younger species watched human news broadcasts and learned about life outside council control. They saw humans terraforming planets in months instead of centuries, building cities that floated in space, and pushing the boundaries of science without asking anyone's permission. More importantly, they saw humans treating other species as equals rather than subjects. Sir, Admiral Chen called out, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. Jackson turned to the main display, which now showed President Williams calling from the rebuilt capital of New Geneva. Admiral, the Security Council has reviewed your reports. We're authorizing Phase 4. Jackson smiled. Acknowledged, Madam President. Operation Liberation is a go. Across human space, sleek ships began emerging from hidden bases. These weren't warships. They were something entirely new. Mobile cities carrying teachers, engineers, scientists, and diplomats. Their mission wasn't to conquer territory, but to offer hope. The age of council dominance was ending. The age of human influence was just beginning. Admiral Kethvar sat in his private quarters aboard the limping Windreaper, composing a report he never thought he would write. The defeat at Kepler had shattered everything he believed about galactic power structures. Personal log, Admiral Kethvar recording, he spoke to the empty room. The humans have achieved something that should have been impossible. They've built a civilization that rivals the Council in less than 2 years. Their technology surpasses ours in crucial areas. Their tactics are innovative. And their strategy is. He paused, searching for the right words. Their strategy is to make allies, not subjects. He thought about the human rescue teams that had pulled crystalline survivors from the wreckage of their ship. They could have left them to die, claimed victory through force. Instead, they had risked their own people to save enemy crews. The Council taught us that power comes from control, from making others obey through fear. But humans seem to believe power comes from cooperation, from making others want to join you. He shook his head. Perhaps that's why they're winning. The report would never reach Council headquarters. By the time the defeated fleet arrived home, Kethvar would have made a very different choice about his future. The Council chambers had never seen anything like it. For the first time in galactic history, member species were openly defying the High Council's authority. The defeat of the combined fleet had sent shockwaves through every corner of known space. And those shockwaves were turning into open rebellion. High Counselor Vextai's crystalline form pulsed with barely contained rage as he watched delegation after delegation announce their withdrawal from Council authority. The Sylvan Collective had been first, followed quickly by the Binary Stars Republic, the nomadic tribes, and dozens of smaller species. Treason, he hissed, his voice like grinding crystal. They abandoned millions of years of galactic order for the promises of upstart mammals. The remaining loyalist species clustered around their platforms, but even they seemed uncertain. The images of human technology had shaken everyone's confidence in Council superiority. Perhaps, suggested the Aquatic Republic's representative from his water tank, we should consider the humans' offer of negotiation. Never. Vextai's form blazed white-hot. The Council does not negotiate with criminals and rebels. If the younger species wish to follow humans into chaos, they will suffer the consequences. But, even as he spoke, Vextai knew the situation was spiraling beyond his control. Intelligence reports painted a terrifying picture of human expansion. They weren't just building ships and colonies. They were transforming entire sectors of space into something unrecognizable. In the Kepler sector, human engineering teams were constructing a ring of orbital habitats around the local star. Each habitat could house 1 billion people in luxury that surpassed anything the Council had ever built. More troubling, They were inviting other species to join them as equals, not subjects. Admiral Kethvar had been among the first to accept. After his return from the disastrous battle, he had resigned his commission and taken his entire fleet into human space. Other commanders had followed his example, bringing with them detailed intelligence about Council military capabilities. Status report, Vextai demanded from his military advisors. General Kethmore, the Council's supreme military commander, stepped forward reluctantly. We have lost 30% of our fleet strength to defections. Another 20% was damaged or destroyed in the Kepler engagement. Current force estimates show human military capabilities now exceed our own. Then, we use other methods. What about the World Killer project? The chamber fell silent. The World Killer was the Council's most closely guarded secret, a weapon capable of destroying entire star systems. It had been built millennia ago, but never used, kept as the ultimate deterrent against rebellion. The device is operational, Kethmore confirmed. But using it would violate every treaty we've ever signed. The younger species would see it as proof of our tyranny. The younger species have already chosen their side, Vextai replied coldly. Deploy the World Killer to human space. Let's see how confident they remain when facing extinction. Light years away, human intelligence networks picked up the transmission within hours. The message raced through quantum-encrypted channels to Admiral Jackson's command center, where it triggered emergency protocols that had been prepared for exactly this scenario. They're bringing out the planet killer, Admiral Chun reported grimly. Intelligence suggests it's some kind of stellar manipulation device, capable of causing stars to go nova. Admiral Jackson studied the tactical displays with calm concentration. They had known this moment would come. The old powers of the galaxy would never accept defeat quietly, and they had weapons that could kill billions with a single shot. Dr. Kane, status on Project Phoenix? Kane's voice came over the intercom from her laboratory deep within Defiant Station. The dimensional shields are ready for field testing. If our calculations are correct, we can protect entire star systems from stellar disruption. And if the calculations are wrong, we all die horribly. But that was going to happen anyway if we don't try. Jackson smiled despite the gravity of the situation. Human scientists had a way of making extinction-level threats sound like minor inconveniences. Deploy Phoenix protocols to all major systems. And activate the Exodus contingency. The Exodus contingency was humanity's ultimate backup plan. If the old Council powers insisted on total war, humanity would abandon this galaxy entirely. Human technology had advanced to the point where interstellar travel was routine, and recent breakthroughs in dimensional physics suggested that travel between galaxies might be possible. Sir, Admiral Torres interrupted, we're receiving priority communications from the defector fleets. Admiral Kethvar is requesting an emergency meeting. Put him through. The main display showed the Zephyrian Admiral aboard his new flagship, a hybrid vessel that combined alien design with human technology. Behind him, Jackson could see mixed crews of humans and aliens working together seamlessly. Admiral Jackson, we've intercepted Council communications about the World Killer deployment. My people have experience with stellar manipulation weapons. We can help. What do you know about their capabilities? Kethvar's expression grew grim. The device can trigger cascade reactions in stellar cores. It's been tested on uninhabited systems, entire star clusters reduced to radiation and debris within hours. If they're desperate enough to use it, they could sterilize half the galaxy trying to stop us, Jackson finished. How many worlds would they sacrifice to maintain their power? All of them, if necessary. The old powers believe that control is more important than life itself. Jackson considered their options. Humanity could run, abandoning the galaxy to the Council's tyranny and starting fresh elsewhere. But that would doom billions of sapient beings to eternal subjugation. Alternatively, they could fight, risking everything on humanity's ability to counter weapons that predated their species by millions of years. Admiral Kethvar, how many ships can your coalition contribute to a defensive action? 8,000 vessels from 12 different species. We're not as advanced as human technology, but we know Council tactics and weaknesses. Then, we stand and fight. Send the word to all free species. Humanity will not abandon the galaxy to tyrants. The decision sparked a wave of activity across human space. Colony worlds that had been building infrastructure switched to military production. Scientists who had been working on peaceful projects turned their attention to weapons of unimaginable power. And, in the deepest research facilities, teams began preparing humanity's ultimate answer to the Council's threat. Dr. Kane stood before a device that seemed to bend space around itself. The quantum singularity engine represented the pinnacle of human scientific achievement, a machine that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. "Final systems check," she announced to her team. "If we activate this device, there's no going back. We'll be changing the nature of space-time itself in a radius of several light years." "What exactly will it do?" asked Dr. Martinez, her chief engineer. "In theory, it will create a zone where the physical laws governing stellar fusion become unstable. Any star within range will either stabilize permanently or burn out gradually over centuries. The Council's weapon depends on cascade reactions. This should make those reactions impossible. And in practice?" Kane shrugged. "We might accidentally create a black hole that devours half the galaxy. Science is always a gamble." 3 days later, the Council's world killer arrived at the edge of human space. The weapon was massive, a space station the size of a small moon, surrounded by escort fleets from the remaining loyal species. As it powered up its stellar manipulation arrays, sensors across human territory detected the energy buildup. "Target confirmed," Admiral Jackson announced from the bridge of the Defiance. "The world killer is preparing to fire on our primary star." Around him, the command crew worked with quiet efficiency. They had drilled this scenario dozens of times, but no simulation could capture the reality of facing a weapon that could kill entire worlds with a single shot. "All civilian evacuation ships are clear," Admiral Torres reported. "Military units are in position. Dr. Kane, activate Phoenix protocols." Across the system, previously invisible installations came online. Massive shield generators that had been hidden in asteroid fields and gas giant cores suddenly blazed with energy, surrounding the star in a cocoon of distorted space-time. The Council weapon fired. The beam that lanced across space carried enough energy to destabilize the nuclear reactions at the heart of a star. It had never failed before, and Council commanders watched with satisfaction as their ultimate weapon reached its target. Then, the impossible happened. The beam struck the dimensional shields around the human star and simply stopped. The energy that should have triggered a supernova was absorbed, redirected, and harmlessly dispersed into higher dimensions. "Impossible," High Counselor Vextai screamed from his command ship. "No known technology can counter stellar disruption." "Human technology, apparently," General Kethmore replied grimly. "They've achieved something we thought was impossible." But the humans weren't finished. As the Council forces stared in shock at their weapons' failure, every human ship in the system simultaneously fired their new quantum disruptor beams. The weapons didn't target the alien ships, they targeted the space around them. Reality twisted and warped as the disruptor beams created zones of altered physics. Ships that had been invincible found their shields failing, their weapons offline, their life support systems struggling against the changed laws of nature in their immediate vicinity. "All Council forces," Admiral Jackson's voice echoed across every communication channel. "You have 60 seconds to surrender before we make the physics changes permanent." The threat was clear. Human technology could now alter reality itself in localized areas. Ships caught in the affected zones would be trapped forever in regions where their technology simply couldn't function. One by one, Council ships began powering down their weapons and requesting terms for surrender. But the old powers weren't finished. Deep in Council space, ancient machines that had slept for millions of years began to stir. The precursors, the original builders of galactic civilization, had left behind guardian systems designed to maintain order at any cost. Admiral Jackson was reviewing surrender documents when alarms began sounding across Defiance Station. "Report. Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures from the galactic core," Admiral Chen announced. "Something is waking up in precursor space." Dr. Kane's voice crackled over the intercom, filled with excitement and terror in equal measure. "I'm reading quantum signatures unlike anything in our databases. These aren't just ships, their mobile space stations the size of star systems. The Guardians, Admiral Kethvar whispered, his face pale with ancient fear. I thought they were myths. What are Guardians? Jackson demanded. The Precursor's final failsafe. Artificial intelligences built to maintain galactic order. They've been dormant for millions of years. But, if they've awakened, Kethvar's voice trailed off. If they've awakened, then we're all dead. Guardians don't negotiate, don't compromise, don't show mercy. They simply restore order by eliminating anything that threatens it. The sensors showed 3 massive structures emerging from the galactic core, each one larger than most solar systems. They moved with purpose that transcended any biological intelligence, their course set directly for human space. How long until they arrive? Jackson asked. At their current speed, 72 hours, Admiral Chen replied. Sir, nothing we have can stop constructs that size. Jackson studied the sensor readings with growing determination. Then, we don't stop them. We do something better. Which is, we convince them they're wrong. The next 72 hours saw the most intensive diplomatic effort in galactic history. Human negotiators, working with representatives from every free species, began broadcasting messages toward the approaching Guardians. They weren't threats or ultimatums. They were something the Guardians had probably never encountered before. They were invitations. We know you were built to maintain order. The message began, transmitted in every language and mathematical system known to galactic civilization. But we ask you to consider a different kind of order. Not the rigid hierarchy of the Council, but the dynamic stability of cooperation. The messages included detailed information about human society, about the alliance of free species, about technologies that enhanced life rather than controlling it. They showed worlds where different species worked together as equals, where conflict was resolved through debate rather than force. Most importantly, they showed the results. Systems that had been stagnant under Council rule were now thriving. Planets that had been mere resource extraction sites were now home to billion-being civilizations. Species that had been suppressed for millennia were now contributing new ideas and innovations to galactic culture. The Guardians received every message, analyzed every data point, and continued their approach without response. 12 hours until contact, Admiral Torres announced. All fleets are in position, but he didn't need to finish. Even humanity's most advanced weapons would be like spitballs against constructs that could contain entire star systems. That was when the impossible happened for the second time in a week. The lead Guardian stopped. For the first time in millions of years, a precursor Guardian chose to communicate with younger species. The signal that reached human space was unlike anything they had ever received, pure information transmitted directly into every receiver simultaneously. Query: define cooperation. Dr. Kane nearly fell out of her chair. They're asking for a definition? They don't understand cooperation. Clarification: precursor records indicate cooperation as temporary alliance for mutual benefit. Your usage appears different. Admiral Jackson stepped forward, speaking directly to the most powerful intelligences in the galaxy. Cooperation, as we understand it, means choosing to work together not because you have to, but because it produces better results for everyone involved. Query: what evidence supports this hypothesis? What followed was the most important presentation in galactic history. Human scientists, alien philosophers, and hybrid AI systems worked together to show the Guardians something they had never seen before. Genuine cooperation producing results that surpassed what any single species could achieve alone. They showed medical advances created by combining human innovation with alien biological knowledge. They showed engineering projects that succeeded because different species contributed different perspectives. They showed art, music, and literature that could only exist through collaboration between minds that thought in fundamentally different ways. Most importantly, they showed growth. Not the controlled expansion the Council permitted, but explosive development in science, culture, and consciousness that came from beings freely choosing to work together. Analysis complete. The Guardian finally announced. Cooperation as defined produces superior outcomes to hierarchical control. Conclusion: current galactic order suboptimal. Directive update: support cooperative paradigm. Council authority terminated. Across the galaxy, the announcement triggered celebrations and panic in equal measure. The most ancient powers in known space had just declared the Galactic Council obsolete and thrown their support behind humanity's vision of free cooperation. High Counselor Vextai's crystalline form cracked as he received the Guardian's announcement. In a single moment, millions of years of Council dominance had ended. The species he had considered inferior had achieved something the precursors themselves endorsed. "It's over," General Kethmore said quietly. "The Guardians have spoken." In human space, celebrations were more subdued. Admiral Jackson stood on the observation deck of Defiance Station, watching ships from dozens of species dock at human facilities. Former enemies were becoming allies, former subjects were becoming partners. "What happens now?" Admiral Chen asked, joining him at the viewport. "Now we build something that's never existed before," Jackson replied. "A truly free galactic civilization. No more councils, no more empires, no more species claiming authority over others. Just beings working together because they choose to. Think it will work?" Jackson smiled as he watched human children playing with young aliens in the station's recreation areas. "Ask me again in a few centuries. But I think we're off to a good start." The age of human dominance had begun not through conquest, but through the simple revolutionary idea that different beings could work together as equals. It was an idea that would reshape not just the galaxy, but eventually the entire universe. And it had all started because one species refused to accept limitations on their dreams.